Hey, welcome to a Nathan Now review of Wicked Part 2, directed by John Chu. Let's do it. The second the credits started rolling on this thing in my theater, some old lady in the front row went, "Woo! Good movie!" As if it was the first good movie to come out in 20 years or something. Wicked Fever is real, and hey, I'm all for it. It's got me tapping my toes. The score is incredible. The music, the songs are great. The lead performances are really just, I think, captivating. But Wicked, I think, is challenging to write like a formal review like this about because so much of what makes it great is getting caught up in the momentum of that music, and it's a very fast paced movie for it to be like, you know, taken with the first one, a 5 hour story version of a 2.5 hour musical. I don't know. I didn't really feel that bloat. I got to the end of that movie. I got to the end and I thought, oh, wow, we're at the end. But any attempt to kind of like slow down and really carefully consider the individual components of what's making this story work, like all of a sudden, like I think a lot of like jank becomes apparent, and there's just I worry that this review is gonna sound like I disliked this movie more than I really did, because there's just so many easy targets for a critic to blast at. I feel like anyone who liked the first one will like this one, and anyone who hated it probably won't have their mind changed. It has all the same pros and cons. I've seen a lot of people saying that, like, oh, the first movie is a lot better because the first half of the musical has all the good songs. And it is true that, like, the second half, I would say, like, there's still good songs there, but none of them are really as catchy as, like, Popular or Defying Gravity or any of that good stuff from the first one. But I also think that the more melancholy tone of the second half plays to the strengths of this particular adaptation's instincts, especially its cast filled with film actors who are used to more subtle performances and are, I think, in that first movie were clearly kind of in over their heads when they were having to give these really like big, bubbly, silly performances, with the exception of like Fierro and Galinda and the ensemble. The ensemble was incredible. They're clearly Broadway people. Wicked is a prequel of sorts to The Wizard of Oz, following the untold story, as its press release says, of the Wicked Witch of the West, known here as Elphaba, known by my transcription software as Alphabet, and Glinda, whose real name is apparently Galinda, who my phone says name is Belinda. At this point in the story, there has never been more things keeping these characters apart, even as they've never felt closer. I think the year-long intermission between the two movies really imbues the tenderness of this sisterhood with an added, dare I say it, gravity that a 15-minute break in between acts while you stretch your legs in a Broadway theater just can't really compete with. These characters, they just feel such joy when they're in each other's presence. It's infectious, and the magic of this bond truly does like dazzle past the movie's other assorted awkwardnesses for me. I don't know, kind of like the magic book of spells does for Elphaba's awkwardness in the movie, right? Film nerds like to hate on these movies for having this overlit synthetic look. It's clearly trying to mimic the technicolor brilliance of The Wizard of Oz and kind of failing. But since this is a nightmare version of that world, I don't know, for me, I think there's something kind of appropriate about it being this garishly digital facsimile of the OG. The bigger problem for me is that, just like part one, almost all of this thing is shot with like medium close-ups, or like kind of roaming gimbal shots going from medium close-up to medium close-up for like some of the ensemble moments. And for me, for one thing, there's not a lot of specificity in terms of like the shot compositions. Like there's this wonderful moment near the end where uh, the two leads are kind of saying goodbye, and they're kind of all, everything's gonna be fine, everything's gonna be fine. I want to close you in this door now, and then it cuts to like the the door is in the middle of the frame, and they're on either side, like kind of breaking down, having their own like private reactions to this goodbye moment, and it's so striking and so wonderful. But I also feel like maybe half of the impact of that moment isn't just like, oh wow, seeing visual storytelling for the first time in 2 hours. The second problem with an over reliance on medium close ups in this movie is just that movement. It's hard for movement to really get a sense of momentum and energy when you're going cut, 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 cut. But again, like the more serious tone of part two kind of helps this. There aren't really a lot of like big dance numbers like there are in the first one, except for Jeff Goldblum's atrocious rendition of Wonderful. Uh, Man, every actor has this dream where someone grabs you and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to be on stage right now. Go, go, go!" And you're like, "Wait a minute, I forgot to learn the lines. What play is this?" And then suddenly you're just standing on stage with no idea what to say. Um, yeah, that's how Jeff Goldblum looks in this song. He's I don't know what he thought he was doing, and I'm kind of surprised that Michelle Yao's very boring but competent performance is getting so much more hate than whatever it is that Jeff Goldblum thinks he's doing here. While I'm complaining about movement, I really have to bring up the song As Long As You're Mine, which is the sexy time, oh boy, Elphaba and Fiyero are making out and they're totally about to do it song. We already know these two actors have great chemistry. They're hotties. I mean, Fiyero has been demoted from jock twink down to just jock, but he's still a good-looking guy. And all you got to do, it seems to me, is just sit these actors next to each other, let them look into each other's eyes, and sing at each other, kind of like how the musical does. It just seems like such an easy and more affordable slam dunk than what they went with. Because in the movie, Elphaba sings, she begins the song singing, "Kiss me too fiercely, hold me too tight," as she walks away from Fiyero. And Fiyero isn't really looking at her, he's like looking down at these like flyers and singing his part of the song. And much of the song proceeds this way. They look like an old married couple getting ready for bed after a really nasty fight. And then when they finally do get close, Elphaba makes them like float up in the air, which is kind of a nice idea in theory, but like it's like their legs are just dangling, and it's like the least sensual thing you could possibly imagine. I don't know why they blocked it that way. A big part of the brilliance and I think appeal of Wicked is that it takes these two versions of femininity, which are usually in competition with each other, the popular girly girl and this sort of like feminist intellectual, and says that these two people don't have to be at war with each other. In fact, it's great for women and little girls to see a little bit of themselves in both. And the first movie is all about these two fighting over these obvious external differences. But now in part two, we've moved past that. And we can worry more about like these deeper internal questions concerning what kind of person do I want to be in the world, and what will my ultimate impact be. And at this point in the story, Alphabet is rebelling against the evil regime by just doing like crazy terrorist shit, like writing "Oz is a liar" in the clouds. And the wizard's regime in response is like branding her as like a wicked witch who must be stopped. She's a threat to your way of life. Just kind of classic right wing fear mongering stuff. And Galinda she's become this crucial actor in the wizard's public performance of Oz as this wonderful, perfect place. And it's interesting. The first movie, Elphaba, is totally the protagonist. But in this one, Galinda is. And I don't remember feeling that way about the show. I think, they've added scenes for sure. But, Elphaba has already made her big character defining choice back at the end of the first one with Defying Gravity. She knows who she is, and every choice that follows in this entry is kind of thrust upon her. Her main function in this story is to challenge Galinda's worldview. Galinda is still figuring herself out. She's become the mouthpiece of this obviously evil authoritarian government. And she's doing it because she's convinced that what she is doing is good, because the tone of her performances are so encouraging and hopeful. How can a fairy tale be bad? So she's caught between the demands of this evil world that she thinks that she can maybe change from the inside, and her unwavering loyalty to Elphaba. And so central to this story is this question of, is good and evil a matter of principle or aesthetics? And Ariana Grande gives, I think, Galinda this like extra emotional range and intellectual capacity without sacrificing the character's ditzy silliness. I think it's an impressive tightrope that she walks that frankly is like probably the one performance in these movies that completely improves on the stage version, even though she did also have a lot more extra scenes to work with to flesh this out. So I usually don't really talk about spoilers in these second channel review videos, because unlike the Acolytes of Horror stuff, which is like all about the deep dive, this I view as like I'm trying to help you have an informed decision about whether or not to see these movies in the theater. But Wicked the musical came out over 20 years ago, so I figured people in the audience have seen it and might want to talk about the ending. I sure want to talk about the ending because it is the weirdest part of the plot for me by a wide margin. So these movies, the ending's just surprisingly cynical for a movie that is as consistently like kind of fun and pretty simple as far as its morals go. The wizard is evil because he's racist against animals. That's about as obvious as it gets, right? Or rather, he's using this racism of the people as a way to manipulate them and stay in control. At one point, he says that he could not tell them the truth about how he's a big fraud and he's not actually magic. And, even if he wanted to tell them, they wouldn't believe him because they're so in love with these lies. They define themselves by these lies. And the narrative of this movie does punish the wizard for his animal cruelty, but it agrees with his low opinion of everyday people. Every single one of them are slack-jawed, pitchfork-waving dipshits. And the movie ends by Elphaba feeling like she has to stage her own death so that she can escape to live her life as a refugee in the freaking desert with her boyfriend. And Galinda beats the baddies by performing a military coup with the help of Elphaba's monkey army behind closed doors, after which she invents a bunch of bullshit to tell the commoners to explain what happened. And that's how it ends. So much is made in this movie of Galinda living a lie and how she needs to, I guess, be more true to like the truth of what is right and what is wrong. And so it's so weird that the moment where her arc is completed, where she's finally standing up to these people, it is also a moment where she tells the biggest lies of her life. It turns out that the lying wasn't the bad part. It was just lying on behalf of bad people. The musical has the exact same ending, pretty much. I don't know why it's hitting me so different now. Maybe it's just because I'm older. I saw the musical like friggin' 2007, I think it was. And maybe I notice it more acutely too because like all the damn close-ups that we get of the ensemble, it makes them feel less like an abstract group and more like a collection of individuals with their own separate thoughts and feelings. Nobody is more brainless than Dorothy herself, who has has little cameos in which we see like the back of her head or her slippers walking down the yellow brick road. She's always in motion, like tirelessly walking towards Elphaba's doom, like a Terminator hunting John Connor. Like Wicked does more than add context to The Wizard of Oz. It claims that the good and evil fantasy of The Wizard of Oz is like literally fascist propaganda. Dorothy does what she's told without question in ways that Galinda ultimately can't do anymore thanks to Elphaba's influence. The chorus for the title song of this movie is a duet in which the two leads sing to each other, "I don't know if I've been changed for the better, but I have been changed for good." And I don't know if I really feel that Galinda taught Elphaba all that much in these movies. Elphaba clearly had a big influence on Galinda, but there's this great little moment in Defying Gravity during the show where, like, Elphaba's about to leave on her broomstick, and before she goes, Galinda like gives her the hat, gives her the scarf, like puts it on around her neck, and kind of like straightens her up for a second while she like stands there like a kid, like on his first day of school or something. Like, and I think there's just this sense that like Elphaba never would have found the self confidence to be able to rebel if not for her popular BFF, and I found myself missing that, and in a weird way, like, because that self-confidence at the end of the day is like the one ideologically sort of pure and simple good thing in this movie that is supposedly an interrogation of like how good and evil can be complicated sometimes. Overall, I don't know that I would say these movies are better than the musical, but one thing I think I do know is that they are pretty good. See you next week. Support my work on Patreon. Support my work on Patreon. Support my work on Patreon. Oh boy.